welcome Concacaf Nations League roster announcement. We've got head coach John Herdman, and we'll start with One Soccer, Oliver Platt, followed by Neil Davidson, Canadian Press, and then Derek from Post Media. Oliver, go ahead.
Thanks, Richard. Hi, John. Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Oliver. Yeah, all good here.
Good. Good to hear from you. This, I guess, is the first steps towards the home World Cup in 2026. Do you see this as kind of a fresh start and an opportunity to maybe change the team, evolve the team, or is it more about picking up where you left off in Qatar?
Yeah, great question, Ollie. The start of a new cycle, a new campaign is always exciting. It's refreshing in many ways. I think having a bit of time post-World Cup, having a January camp or window to go into has given us all, I think, that little bit of time to breathe, to reflect, to review, to look at, what's available over this next quadrennial in terms of our player pool. But then the reality hits that we're still in competition. We're still in a Nations League qualification game that's important, not only for Gold Cup, not only for an opportunity to compete in the Nations League finals, but also for ranking points to ensure that Canada maintain a top 4 ranking for Copa America. So there's so much to play for in March. Sometimes starting a new cycle, you get a couple of friendly games to really have a look at those players that were on the extended squads and the wider squads that Canada have put out over the last few years. But, not to be. I think we have to pick up from where we left off. We created a good foundation, I think, in the last quadrennial to give us a lot to build on moving forward. So, selection was more about winning matches. It was more about who's fit and not injured, and who's playing at the levels required to compete against tough opponents like Curacao and Honduras.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Neil, go ahead.
Thanks, Richard. Hi, John. It's nice to speak to you again. I hope you're well.
I'm good. It's been a while.
John, it's been over 3 months since Qatar. Given what's been going on around the men's and women's teams off the pitch, has it been business as usual for you? And when you get the team together, do you address the elephant in the room, so to speak, or do you just focus on football?
I think there's no doubt that what's happening behind the scenes has taken an emotional toll. I think everyone's mental health is important, and I think for those that are working in the organisation, and the players, it definitely is taking its toll. It should be a really celebratory time, in our football, history. But ultimately, it's becoming a time of provocation and change, and that's important too. So, I think to ignore it is as a leader, I don't think you can just ignore these things. I think you have to ensure you fully understand what's happening in that environment and how people feel and what they're really trying to say with their actions. But at the same time, we're here to inspire through our performances as much as what's happening off the pitch, and I think that's what I have to focus on now and try to bring this group of players and the organisation's attention to winning 2 very important matches, which give us a chance to maybe go off and push for our first trophy in a long time.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you. Derek?
Hey, I just want to ask you about getting the band back together here. I guess, how do you feel about? I know it's been a long time. It doesn't seem that long ago that we were all in Qatar together. But how do you feel about just getting the guys back together and getting the group back together and just getting all back together as a unit again?
I think there's an excitement building. Over the last 3 months, I've had a chance to connect in with quite a lot of the players. Some of the players have had multiple connects talking about the future, talking about the past, what we learned over the last 4 years, understanding what we need to change for this next 4 years to get this country to the next level. We respect that it was a 4-year process to lay a foundation that hopefully we can all stand on now to reach another level in world football, another level of respect, and another level of achievement. Well, those conversations over the last 3 months have been really deep and meaningful with the majority of the squad. So the process of reconnecting has been going on for some time now. I think bringing the players in, there's a real energy that I'm sensing and a desire and a commitment to want to win things for Canada. So we finished top of Concacaf on that journey. That was something, we were all privileged to be part of. And we've got to ensure that there isn't any complacency going into Concacaf, because there's just no easy games. The conditions, the realities on how hungry these teams are to chase you now, which we're the hunted now, not the hunters in many ways. So there's a lot of added motivation, I think, for this group. But right at the core of it, they want to experience lifting a trophy for Canada. They want to experience winning and pushing up the rankings at the world level. So they're the messages that I've heard, Eric, from the players and what they're excited about coming back in. And I think all of us, it's been too long now. And I think we've had enough time just to let the World Cup go and the excitement and the feelings from that, just to get ready to go again.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joshua, followed by Matthew Shinetti, and then Joe Callahan.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm good, Josh.
When you look back at the way you guys played at the World Cup and you have these conversations with players, what specifically do you take away from the performances on the field, and how is that going to kind of inform the way that you guys play in this upcoming window?
Yeah, I mean, the time that we had post-World Cup really afforded us the opportunity to get into the deep dive, and you let the emotions settle of getting knocked out of the group stage at the second game. That's tough. It's tough for any team to absorb in the moment, and with that, the noise that comes with those experiences. So when that, the dust is settled, you're able to get into the learnings, the key learnings, and in working with the players, they've all seen the analytical deep dive into our performance and the review of that. And I think the starting point in speaking to the players is always where we started on the grid, coming into this World Cup, and players, recognizing what we believed was achievable, and then comparing that with, the cold hard facts of, whether or not, how many World Cups you've been to as a team, how many Tier 1 games you had in preparation, how many Tier 1 players you had in your squad in comparison, what the cumulative valuation was of our team in relation to our opponents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the players were able to again, look at the starting points and then, progressively work through our achievements, as well as look at our gaps. And the stats are very clear. There were some very, positive elements of Canada's performance. And I think what people could see, or the players could see, is the things that we put attention to. We were actually ranked pretty high in the world in those areas. Some of the physical data, Canada's players were finishing number 1 in the world positionally in some aspects of their average physical output. So there was something about our effort that was unquestionable across the team. And then when you look at some of the tactical data to, see Canada coming out as, having the second highest defensive line heights. It showed, again, a commitment to that aggressive style, or being in the top 5 for denying progressions into your attacking quarter. Top 5 in the world shows, again, the resilience and some of the defensive acumen. But, there were some big gaps, and the gaps where we underperformed in both boxes. There was, an XG stat that didn't help us, and that was, all of our opponents overperformed in their goal scoring abilities against Canada. Given the XG data in our box, and we underperformed in their box. We just weren't clinical enough. We didn't pull the trigger enough. We maybe pulled the trigger when there was better options. So these are things that, one, we need to put more attention on. I think I came out the Uruguay game saying this, that a team has 3 shots on target and scores 2. Or against Belgium, we have 24 shots on goal, and we're not able to convert. There's what we train is what we become, and a lot of our work in the foundation phase, building into Qatar, was around our progression and denying progression. Now we've got to get into the finer details of how to score against tier 1 teams that have qualitative advantages over you, and teams with experiential advantages. How do we, break those new barriers for this team? So it's going to take work, but I'd say, in short, we've done the work with the players to raise awareness, and now it's about getting into Concacaf, which is a different beast, Josh. You're now facing underdogs. You're not the underdog in those games. You're not facing qualitative disadvantages. On paper, our team, we have players playing at higher levels. So now this is about, back into that mentality and spirit to go into tough environments, hostile environments, and being able to perform and get results in tough places against teams that are very motivated to beat you. So things shift. Hopefully, we can get tier 1 games in the future, because I think the players and staff are clear. Canada can't go into its next tournament with only one tier 1 game in a decade. When you're in those matches, you're learning on the job as players, as a staff, as you start to realise, the differences between your team and the teams you're playing against. We need those games, and hopefully some friendly matches in September, October open the door to that.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Matthew.
Hope you're well, John. Beyond the next tournament, we know the schedule is going to get packed. You have obviously the Nations League, and then the Gold Cup, and then a reformat Nations League, possibly a Copa America, and then another Gold Cup, and then you have the World Cup. Then what you wanted to come out of the World Cup has started to happen. Alistair Johnston is working his way with Celtic to try to win another domestic treble, and Tejan Buchanan has played in the Champions League. Stefan Eustáquio has played. Kyle Laren's playing well. Real Valladolid. A lot of these players are playing a lot of football. Speaking to Alistair Johnston last week, he talked about a plan between some of the players and the coaching staff about just maintaining these players' bodies, because the amount of high-quality football that some of them are playing, especially at the European level. What kind of plan, or what can you tell us of the plan that you're formulating over the next number of months and into the next 3 years, knowing that you might have players, especially when you look at Tejan Buchanan, who is rumored to be making a move this summer, and hypothetically speaking, there might be a situation where there might be a reluctance from a player making a move, or a club talking to him, or all of these other things now that players are juggling beyond obviously wanting to excel for Canada.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we've got to be realistic about our players. When you look at the US, they have something like 18 players now playing in tier 1 leagues. So they're able to get a real balance around maybe who they call in and how they operate. When you look at a window like June and July, where there's a 4-day turnaround between a 10-day Nations League potential 10-day Nations League final if you make it there, and then into the Gold Cup. And what we know is, a lot of the European players are calibrating their off-season with the European Nations League program in June, and then into a build into their seasons. And for those players that are new to Europe, it's more individualized. Matthew, I think you have to look at each player's dynamic. Someone like Alistair is well aware of the amount of games he's going to play moving in to that end of his season, because he will go to all the championship games, and then he knows he's got to make decisions about how he gets himself and maintains a healthy mentality as well as body through his first pre-season for Celtic at the time. And who knows, he might be getting a move. You never know with these players. I think, someone like Ali's been very consistent in his first season. So there's those factors for each individual. Will Tejan get a move, and therefore will that rule him out of a Gold Cup, given it'll be his first pre-season with a new club? So we've just got to be ready for that. And I think for us, there may be tournaments where we have to be very specific about the quality of the team that we bring in, and therefore which tournaments are we prioritizing, what events are we prioritizing, particularly in that summer window, Matthew. It's, the back-to-back June Nations League with a 4-day turnaround to a Gold Cup, which could be pretty much a month-long tournament, is all the players want to play it, given the conversations you're having with them. But at the same time, when it comes to that time, if their bodies aren't healthy, then we have to make big decisions around giving them rest. And we did that with Jonathan David in the Gold Cup, prior to the World Cup qualifying. We just wanted to prioritise that window. I guess the only difference this year where players may want to prioritise is that the September-October windows are scheduled as friendly windows at this stage if Canada maintains its top 4 rankings. So that may give players more onus to come into both events and compete for trophies. So again, it's definitely more individualized than a squad-wide plan, and I've been speaking to the players about, at this stage, how they feel about that heavy schedule in the summer. And most of them are optimistic about coming to both events.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joe, followed by John Molinaro, please.
Hi, John. Thanks for your time, mate. You mentioned this being the start of the new quadrennial and what you're looking on, but obviously it's a bit shorter than previous quadrennials, and it's a bit unorthodox having automatically qualified for the World Cup, but the stakes are obviously still kind of sky high. But I just wonder, with the squad today, but more so as you put your mind to June 2026, maybe looking at the age profile of some of the leaders in the squad, Atiba, Milan, Stephen Vittoria, are there specific areas of your team that you're more concerned, or maybe more focused on strengthening in the kind of in the next year or so, looking forward towards kind of June 2026?
It's a good question, Joe. I think there is some transition expected over the next year or two. I think there'll be transition this year. There's a group we're committed to because we're currently in competition with Nations League, and there's players that just have got that experience of being in these environments, but more importantly, winning in these environments. It wasn't so long ago Canada really struggled to go away and get results or wins in Concacaf environments, and these players have had that experience together. So there's an element of keeping a group together for a period of time to allow the continuity of the Nations League competition. But I think you'll see some transition this year. But at the same time, Joe, you have to have players that are playing at that next level and at a level that their experiences warrant the calls up. And I think that's, when you look at Canada now and we've got some young players in MLS that are knocking on the door, which is brilliant. And at some point, while MLS is a solid league and there's great experiences can be had in that environment, those Champions League experiences, the Europa League experiences, those are the next level of football experiences that I want my players to be pushing towards, and to be able to be at that place where Morocco is at, where you've got 14 tier 1 opposed to 3 in your squad. So I think that's a reality. I mean, we were projecting out. We were talking about this with the players in our 2026 projections and looking at what our squad could look like. I think at the highest we may have 8 tier 1 players, and the average to get out of a group stage is, well, it was at an all-time highest this year, which was 16, and those are players playing in the top 5 leagues. So you're projecting out on a bigger picture and looking at what the pool looks like as it is, and which players might track in your pool to the top 5 leagues in Europe. We're confident. We will have some players tracking, but it takes 2 decades, 3 decades to get to where the US are now, or again where teams like Morocco or Japan have been able to get to with their numbers. So it will take time, but as I said to the players, it's about now saying if there is going to be another qualitative differential for Canada, where do we now have to focus our attention? And these are the questions, the players have been mulling over with the staff. How do we make sure we do close that gap, and we're not coming into another tournament recognizing, okay, there are gaps here, but we're not using that as any excuse. This is a home World Cup. And also what we know is in home World Cups, there's only, I think, 6-7 teams in the last 7 World Cups have been able to break out of a group with, less than the averages of the tier 1 players. And, the majority of those teams that have broken out of the group have been home World Cup teams, hosts. So I think it bodes well because of your seeding and your rankings, but that's not for us. We want to be, the best team we can be, and give ourselves the best teams to push way beyond a group stage when we're in 2026. But the reality is it will take longer to produce and develop a squad that is littered with, the tier 1 players. That gives you more of the probability of breaking out of groups and into quarterfinals and into semifinals.
Great stuff. Cheers, John.
But Alexander from One Soccer, go with you next. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard and John. Hope you're doing well. I guess as you saw, thank you. I guess as you saw at the World Cup, I mean, obviously, you had a chance to see midfields and how important, they are in your group. You got a chance to go up against the best. It's no secret for you guys lately. You've had a bit of a tough time just in terms of injuries and form. You got to call up Victor Laturi, obviously, to add to this group. So what do you make kind of your group now? And, how important is it just growing the depth there, especially as you get set to play those games in 2026 and 2024?
Yeah, I mean, players that aren't able to come in open opportunities for others. And I'm looking forward to see Victor in our environment and Dominic Sator. And these are players that have progressed out of our Canadian Premier League and taken a risk to go over to Europe in those sort of second and third tier leagues in Europe and getting experiences that Canadians have often struggled to. I think those that have taken that jump have not always found it easy, and these players are getting consistent minutes, which is really important for selection in these windows. They're playing in leagues where it's not easy. It reminds us of some of the matches that they're going to have to play in Concacaf, where their backs are against the wall and tough conditions. But they've done well, and to see Victor playing against Rangers and Celtic and 50,000 stadiums, and being able to perform and handle that pressure and demonstrate his capabilities. I think that was big for me. Some of the other games are more about tough matches in Scotland, which if anyone follows that league, there are a lot of tough games there, very physical. But, those games against Celtic and Rangers, I think, he was able to really showcase not only his mental capacity to handle the moment, but some of his technical ability. So looking forward to see him in there. And again, you always get a gauge, can they handle that next step up when you're on a training field with, Davies, David, Lauren, Buchanan, Estacio, and you're in and around Osorio, the movements of those players and the speed that they'll want to play at. Players get found out pretty quickly on whether or not they've got the technical capability, but more importantly, the mindset to try and adapt in that moment and stick with it. So I'll be able to see that. And either way, I think it'll be a great learning experience for both these players.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Thank you very much. And we'll take a couple more calls. Mitchell, would like to take a question?
Yeah, thanks, John. Kind of building on Alex's question. Obviously, Zator and Laturi, very recently played in the Canadian Premier League. What does it say about this league's continued growth that, those players are able to go over and test themselves in Europe and obviously now find themselves in your national team player setup?
Yeah, I think it's really important that the Canadian Premier League is creating that foundation. It's certainly creating a foundation for players to push on. Dom left the Premier League and he had a few tough runs in different environments, but for me it's a testament of that player that just has the resilience to one, believe in his abilities, and two, to keep going and keep pushing. And I think, when you're starting in the Canadian Premier League, for a lot of players, they know that, this is a starting point to hopefully the next level of football, which is Europe. And we're starting to see it. I think Victor's another great example of a young player. And I think that's what I'm hoping to see. I'm hoping to see that Canadian Premier League just get a bit younger so we can start springboard, those younger players that can really use that development experience, playing in a good league in Canada with experienced Canadian players, and then springboard out to the next level. The younger those players are, the better. So, it'll be good to see, more players under the age of 21, picking up minutes in the Canadian Premier League, and therefore hopefully springboarding more out like Victor.
That will wrap up our media call today with John Herdman. Thank you very much. For any follow-up, please via media@canadasoccer.com. Happy to reconnect on any follow-up questions. And thank you very much for your time today, John.
Thank you.